So, anyways, I fly a lot, almost every weekend. I've never ever had a situation where on the airplane, right as soon as we landed, because there was an emergency, they had to let someone off the airplane because they had a seizure. That's why we were delayed. And I had to ask the people, could you let me off the plane first? And everyone just parted the aisle to let me be first. So that was a huge blessing. But anyways, I'm glad to be here. And I'm gonna have the PowerPoint get set up here. I'm gonna just get everything set. And a lot of times I don't have my messages recorded for Audioverse. Normally I'll have them live streamed for the local churches, but this one I'm planning on to submitting it to Audioverse. And so for that reason, I just want to make sure I get everything set up, and then we'll begin. I appreciate the prayer. I want to make sure the PowerPoint is up. Okay.
God does things for a reason. No problem.
I'll let you airdrop this here.
Which one is it?
This one right here.
Okay. Thank you. I got it, Donnie.
Do you guys have a clicker? That'd be great.
Donnie, how about that one? Is that it? Still not up? I do. Yes, sir. Oh, you know what? Let's try this. Just 1 second. We'll go straight to here. There we go.
Okay, I'm gonna just test this real quick. Where do I point this? Back to you guys over there?
Actually, well, yeah, we have to do this, and we have to do this and this, and this is all going to work out. God is good. Okay, do that and that. Yeah, that's right. Okay. There we go, brother. Praise the Lord.
Okay, perfect.
Amen.
Amen. There is a saying that expresses a sentiment that is trending in Korea these days, and it goes like this. 결혼 안 하면 외롭다. 결혼하면 괴롭다. Translated, what it says is, if you don't marry, you're lonely. If you marry, you're miserable. It's basically saying that marriage is a catch-22. This was not what God intended. God intended for marriage to be a taste of heaven on earth, and for many, the reality is marriage is a taste of hell on earth. This is no bueno. The Pen of Inspiration tells us God wants the home to be the happiest place on earth, the very symbol of the home in heaven. The marriage institution is the foundation or the bedrock of the family, and by extension, the home. Hence, Satan concentrates his efforts to break down our marriages, which leads to the breakdown of our homes. Where is our first mission field? It's our homes. And ironically, where is the hardest place to be a Christian? It's in the home. I've been married for 23 years, and I can say unequivocally that two of the greatest joys of my life is my relationship with my wife and my two daughters. Here's some interesting facts about marriage. Men, did you know that married men are not only healthier and happier and earn more money, but that they actually live longer. The US Surgeon General says loneliness poses health risks as deadly as smoking. Studies estimate that being lonely is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So the only thing more challenging than being a single lonely man is a single lonely man who smokes 15 cigarettes a day. The obvious conclusion is, men, it is much to your advantage to be married. I highly recommend it. Unfortunately, the same does not hold true for women. Married men live longer, married women, not so much. This study published by Yale University states that a number of studies report that single women tend to be healthier and less depressed, living longer than married women. Ladies, please be aware that marriage is a documented health risk. It is not to your advantage to get married. Now, last week I was sharing this message at Advent Hope, which was a much younger crowd, so a lot of single ladies. Here, I'm thinking most of you are all married. So to the younger people, I say, if you're gonna marry, make sure that you marry well. Make sure you marry a good man, a man who will contribute to your longevity and not to your expiration. 23 years ago, Amy and I got married. I was 28, she was 22. Don't we look happy? She was young, sweet, and beautiful. And after being married for 7 years, it felt like 10 minutes had gone by. But don't be jealous, because it felt like 10 minutes underwater. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Houston, we have a problem. 7 years in, and we're having serious marriage problems. Do you know in what year is most common for divorces? How did you know? Sister White tells us, no one can so effectually ruin a woman's happiness and usefulness and make life a heart-sickening burden as her own husband, and no one can do 100th part as much to chill the hopes and aspirations of a man, to paralyze his energies and ruin his influence and prospects as his own wife. It is from the marriage hour that many men and women date their success or failure in this life and their hopes of the future life. Now, some of you may have listened to Pastor Mark Gunger's presentations that he does on marriage. He found a verse in the Bible that if you follow this one simple verse, that you will never have problems in your marriage, ever. How many of you think that's a Bible verse worth looking at? Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 7:1, it is good for men not to get married. Now, why would Paul say that? He goes on to explain in 1 Corinthians 7:28, those who marry will face many troubles in this life. Then he says, and I want to spare you of this. It's just simple. You don't get married, you're not going to have marriage problems. You get married, you will experience marriage problems. Why? Because God is in the work of refining our characters. And marriage, in my opinion, is one of the best crucibles that God uses to effectively do this. Do you know what happens in a crucible? It gets painfully hot. This extreme heat is needed to burn off the impurities in order to shape our characters. One of my good friends, who's a very principled man, he would look very unfavorably upon divorce. After having been married, you know what he said to me recently? He goes, now that I've been married, I don't judge anybody who gets divorced because he has experienced the heat of the crucible for himself. The title of tonight's message is Marriage Comes from Heaven, but so does lightning and thunder. I chose this title to underscore the point that marriage is full of heavenly joys, but God allows storms to come into our lives to refine us and to shape our characters and to redirect us towards His purpose. And if we cling to Jesus, He will carry us through the storm and take us to the other side. As the title of this famous book stated it so succinctly, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We're all familiar with this. In general, men and women are wired differently. We men are simple. Women are more complex and sophisticated. We men are simple. That is why they can sell us things like this, 5-in-1 shampoo. If you look at the label, it's got shampoo, conditioner, body wash, face wash, and 24-hour deodorizer, all in one bottle. No woman would buy something like this for themselves. All they need to do is add toothpaste, and we would be set. They say that the average man only needs 6 items in the bathroom. They say that the average number of items a woman has is 337. Now, when I first heard that, I thought that sounded a little ridiculous. You look in any woman's bathroom, and it's no exaggeration. Us men, we're okay if we have holes and socks in our underwear as long as the elastic is good. My wife will throw away a pair of my underwear, and I'm just like, why did you throw away this perfectly good underwear? No one's gonna see the hole. Women in general, these are generalizations, women in general don't wear underwear and socks with holes in it. Us men, when there's a hole, a woman sees a hole, we men, we see ventilation. Now, as if we're not already different enough, my wife and I couldn't have been more opposite. I like mountains, she likes beaches. I'm right-handed, she's left-handed. She likes the toilet paper coming from the bottom. I like the toilet paper coming from the top. I'm a total extrovert. She's a total introvert. A lot of people are surprised when they find out she's an introvert because she seems and appears to be very social. But that's just because she's what I would call a high-functioning introvert. But she's very introvert, trust me. I grew up Adventist. She did not grow up Adventist, so I love to eat Big Franks. She cannot eat Big Franks. My wife is patient, I'm impatient. My wife is type B personality, I'm a type A personality. One of us is usually on time to church and the other one is usually chronically late. I'm not gonna tell you which one's usually late, just in case she's watching the live stream. I think you get the point, we could not be more opposite. Now my twin brother is a pastor and currently he's an evangelist with Amazing Facts and he does this message called The 6 Stages of Marriage. In fact, you can actually listen to it, it's on Audioverse right now. And I highly recommend listening. It's a really good message on marriage and relationships. It's completely different from the one that I'm sharing. Anyways, he shares about the different stages of a relationship, and this doesn't apply just to marriage, it can apply to all relationships, your coworkers, your friends, people that you meet, people in church. Now, what is the first stage of any relationship? It's called the what stage? Honeymoon stage. The next stage is called, what was I thinking? What initially drew you is now beginning to repel you. And the third stage is everything would be great if you changed. Now, I came across a message by Dr. Neil Nedley about the 6 stages of marriage, and they correlated with what my brother shares, but he uses what we would call scientific terms. The first stage is called the euphoric stage. This is when there's a happy cocktail of hormones running through your brain. Your lover can do no wrong, you don't see any red flags. Dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and so it's very chemically induced. Stage 2, he calls it the non-euphoric stage. This is you will feel in love with your partner, but your spouse is not the only person constantly on your mind. And the third stage is called the crisis stage or despicable stage. In this stage, Dr. Nedley says you can look across the room and see your spouse and have despicable thoughts about your spouse. By year 7, this is where my wife and I were at. I think this is important to know, especially for young people, because a lot of young people think that once you meet that right person, it's going to be a honeymoon for the rest of your life. And that only happens in Hollywood, fairy tales, and in Korean dramas. Now, we were in stage 3, the despicable stage or crisis stage. The if my spouse would only change. There's a verse in the Bible where it talks about Michal, David's wife, and it talks about how she despised King David. So you see this even in the Bible. Now, as humans, we label people into categories such as extroverts and introverts. We categorize people like conservatives and liberals. Now, these are labels that I just came up with and how I categorize people. It's something I codified, so you're not going to find it in Google. But you may be able to relate. And I call people by 2 categories, drippers and non-drippers. So to a room this side, about size, half of you guys will be introverts and half will be extroverts. So about half of you will be what I call drippers and half of you will be what I call non-drippers. They both have redeeming qualities, and I'll go into both of these types of people. I'm a non-dripper. When I come out of the shower, I'm going to dry off completely, or I will stand on the towel and dry off, and I'm not dripping water all over that bathroom floor. Some people, they come out and they just leave a trail, and she's laughing because she knows exactly what I'm talking about. You look in someone's sink. When you look at a dripper sink, there's stuff all over the mirror, there's water splattered everywhere, and there's usually toothpaste in the sink. If I spend just 30 seconds with you in the kitchen, I can tell instantly if you're a dripper or non-dripper. If I pour something, I will pour it so it doesn't drip and land on the kitchen table or the floor. If I see something drip, I will notice it and instantly I will wipe it up. Open up someone's butter container. If you're a non-dripper, there's not going to be anything in there but butter. For the drippers, you'll see breadcrumbs in there. You're following me? I am a non-dripper, and my wife is a complete dripper. In most marriages, one spouse tends to be a dripper and one spouse will tend to be a non-dripper. Now, I want to take you into the mind of what it's like to be a non-dripper. So one evening, I was asked to give a Vespers talk at somebody's house. I show up, and one of my friends is in the kitchen cutting up the watermelon. He sees me, and he smiles, and he goes, "Hey, Cal." He wants to give me a handshake. He hands both watermelon juice. He takes his hand to shake my hand, which is fine. That's not the problem. It's his other hand. He takes that, and he pats me on the back. I've got a brand new white Lululemon shirt on. I'm thinking, you're kidding me. So after we greeted each other, I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, took off my shirt, and I washed the back of my shirt. We had friends staying over at our house as guests. Now, years ago, we had a little hedgehog named Rosie, and they're cute, and that's about it. They're the worst pet ever. And we sold this pet after about 2 to 3 months. My daughter begged for this little hedgehog, and so we told her, "You're going to pay for it, you're going to take care of it." And the thing about this hedgehog is I've never seen an animal that actually walks in its own feces. Most animals don't do that. But anyways, if you've owned a little pet or an animal, when they poop on your carpet, sometimes it's like a tiny little Tootsie Roll, and you can just take a little napkin and just pick it up. Well, this hedgehog, Rosie, had pooped underneath our dining table on the rug, and my friend's wife, before I could stop her, took a paper towel, came up to it, and just wiped it, and smeared that poop right into my rug. Brenda, you know what you know. I can tell you're a non-dripper. You understand. I was mortified. My heart said, "Kill her." But my brain said, "Thou shalt not kill." My wife is an amazing cook. But as she cooks, every time she needs a new utensil, she pulls out a new utensil. Every time she needs a new pot or pan, she pulls out a new one. I learned to cook from my mom. You know what I do? Every time I need something new, I wash the stuff that I've already got out. So when I'm done cooking, there's just not a pile of mess. When my wife cooks, she's an amazing cook, but there is a pile of dishes. Sabbath mornings, almost always, my wife is late on the way to church. So guess what we're doing on the way to church? We're fighting on the way to church. Have you ever experienced that on the way to church? I'm sure none of you have. It's a great way to start Sabbath. And then you show up to church and you smile and just say, "Happy Sabbath," like nothing happened. My wife and I couldn't be more polar opposite, and these things would spill into every other facet of our marriage. How do we raise the kids? How do we manage our finances? I'm not going to go into the details, but it was a lot of little things that were causing schisms in our marriage. Now, years ago, I was listening to a message that Pastor David Ashwick was doing at a men's conference. I was listening to it online, and I want to share with you just a little bit of the profound insight that he was sharing. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to read through all these because you're familiar with these Bible texts, but God takes Adam and puts him in the garden and gives him a job. Your job is to take care of the garden. And then with Eve, God says, "I'm going to make you a helpmeet," and God provides him a wife. And God he blesses them. He says, "Be fruitful and multiply." So God gives Eve a job. Yours is to help your husband, work with him, and also work together to build a family. So before sin, Adam has a job. He has a purpose. Go and work and provide for the family. And his wife, her heart is knit to her husband's heart to work together. Post-sin, does their jobs change? No. Adam is still to go and work, but now there's an element of pain and suffering involved with his work. And with Eve, does her job change? No, she's still to have children, work with Adam, but now there's an element of pain and suffering. Now, nothing changes post-sin, pre-sin, and post-sin. God defines and articulates what their rules are. I want to underscore a simple but most important point. Fundamentally, men and women are wired very differently. Why? Because God engineered us to be different. Scripture teaches that men and women are equal but have different rules. Our culture today wants to tell us that we're exactly the same. But the Bible tells us that we were both created in God's image. Galatians 3:28 tells us there is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Men and women are equal in spiritual values and dignity, but we were created for distinct complementary roles. A most obvious example would be men were not given the privilege of carrying and giving birth to a child. Because of the way that God wired us men, we men derive our purpose from our work, from the way that we're able to provide for our families. Few things stress me out like when something goes bad at work. So when a man finishes college, he feels like he's accomplished something. He goes out. We men, we like to build things. We like to finish projects. When work is going well, a man can feel a sense of accomplishment and feel very fulfilled. Talk to a man who's ever lost his job, and you will discover how hurtful and difficult that can be for a man. Take a man in his 40s who feels like he hasn't accomplished anything, and find out how difficult and devastating it can be for a man. And of course, taken to an extreme, a man can become a workaholic. On the contrary, because of the way that God has wired women, their self-worth, their existence, and meaning in life is not tied so much to what she does as a career, but it's more tied to her husband and family. There's a reason why the expression a mother's instinct exists. We don't ever go, oh, it's a father's instinct. That applies to women. As an example, my wife and I, we love animals. This is one of our dogs, Boston, who's a Yorkshire Terrier. And my wife is in tune with our animals. She knows when they haven't eaten. She knows when they're not feeling well. I'm clueless. I don't know. I just play with them and I just do what my wife tells me to do. My wife was on a trip and she tells me exactly what to do to take care of our animals. And during the phone call one night, she goes, "Why is Boston limping?" Now, I saw Boston limping. I knew she was limping. I didn't think anything about it. I go, "How did you know?" She goes, "I saw it through the Ring camera." I mean, you know what a Ring camera is, right? It's just when someone's walking through the door, and my wife saw that. And it's amazing. And why is she so intuitive about things like this? It's because it's the way that God engineered women to be like this. The Bible says her desire is for her husband. So when a woman feels loved, appreciated, cared for, she thrives, blossoms, and flourishes. She is happy and content. How do you think a woman feels when her husband shows contempt or disapproval? A woman will begin shutting down. I was doing this and didn't realize how much I was hurting my wife and destroying our marriage. It slowly became a vicious cycle. I was difficult and impossible to please, and everything my wife did would drive me crazy. Now, I was young. I'd never been married before. So here, I'm thinking, I'm working all day long. You're on vacation because you're a stay-at-home mom. I come home. There's toys all over the floor. I go in the kitchen. There's dishes piled up. And of course, my blood pressure just starts going up. I know now how hard it is to stay at home all day long with little kids. It's much easier to go to work. Work is easy. I'm having adult interactions. But I didn't know that. And have you noticed when you don't like someone, everything they do starts to irritate you? And so we were having problems. At this time, now we're seeing a marriage counselor. And I thought I knew what the problem was. It's stage 3. I had narrowed it down. It was simple. Remember what stage 3 is? If only my wife would change. As sinful human beings, we are naturally drawn to focus on or behold the negative things. A New York Times article stated that you are more affected by losing $50 than if you found a $50 bill on the ground. That just makes sense. That's why you never forget when someone borrows money from you. Have you noticed that when they borrow money from you, they tend to forget often? When you think about your childhood, are you more apt to think about all the blessings of your childhood, or are we apt to think about all the negative things and the bad things that happen to us as children? We just naturally tend to gravitate towards negative things. And in my marriage, I was no exception. All I could do is dwell on all the little drippings that I would see with my wife. I was not content to survive in a mediocre marriage. A lifeless marriage was not an option for me. I knew that with God in control, that He can turn our marriage around and make it a beautiful marriage. I just didn't know how. So I did what any self-respecting Christian would do. I got on my knees and I cried out to God. That classic prayer I'm sure many men and women have prayed. Please, Lord, change my wife. Earnestly. I prayed this for months. And do you know what happened? How did you know? You prayed the same prayer, eh, my sister? Nothing, nada, zilch. It was like my prayers hit the ceiling and bounced right back. After months and months, maybe years of praying this and nothing happening, and I've got my ministry friends praying for me, I've got people close to me praying, I changed my prayer to the following. My prayer was changed to, help me to love her as she is. Like, Lord, take away these ugly feelings because I don't have loving feelings towards my wife. Help me to love her as she is. Now, without knowing it, what I was asking God to do was I was asking Him to change me, right? Change these negative feelings that I have. And my experience shows me that God is not as inclined to answer the former prayer, but He's always ready to answer the latter prayer. And God answered my prayer in a very remarkable way. I had an epiphany, and I believe that God gave me this epiphany. And it goes something like this. Why did you marry this woman who's the bane of my existence? Now, I'm going to tell you why my wife married me. One of the things was that she did not want to marry a lazy person. But she got more than she bargained for with me because I'm anything but lazy. I don't sit still for a moment. I'm usually going 100 miles an hour. For me, I don't like to be controlled. I detest being nagged. I'm super type A and very intense, and I can never be married to someone like myself. I love that my wife was so laid back and easygoing. If I married someone like myself, we'd be colliding all the time. To put it bluntly, my personality is particular and picky. Her personality is chill. Because she is so easygoing, I have a wife who doesn't nag me. You know what a blessing that is? My wife doesn't hold grudges. She forgives and forgets. She's very generous. My wife is very mentally and emotionally stable. She doesn't have a crazy bone in her body. I have some friends who are married and their spouse is a little bit crazy. She's a very happy and content person. My wife is not a needy person. She's very secure. And as active and as adventurous as I am, and I'm constantly traveling, I need someone who is like that. I can go to a dinner party and my wife's not going to be like, where were you? What are you doing? Who are you talking to? My wife just gives me my space, and that's the kind of person I need. She allows me to do as much ministry as I want and is fully supportive of what I do. My wife is really good at business. A lot of dentists have a hard time with dentistry because you're not only seeing patients, you got to run a business. I have it as good as it gets because my wife pretty much runs the office. I don't have to deal with insurance. I don't have to deal with payroll, all the bills. My wife takes care of that. All I have to do is the dental part, which to me is the easy part. My wife is super sweet. She looks after my parents. My parents think my wife is amazing. And even though she's a dripper, she's an amazing cook, and my parents like to come over just to eat her food. She's an amazing and wise mother. My daughters are very close-knit to her. Their friends exclaim that they wish they had a relationship with their moms, like my daughters have with their mother. I have to credit my wife for the great relationship that we have with our daughters. Paul Orfalea, the founder of Kinko, I like his definition, what he defines as success. He says success to him is when your children want to be with you when they're adults. I like this measure of success. We recently moved down to Loma Linda. As long as our girls want to live with us, we're willing to move to where they go to school. So this way, at least I work in Washington, but I can see them almost every weekend. And then my wife stays with him, and this way I get to see him. My wife has helped me to be a better dad. She says to me stuff like this, honey, you're repeating yourself. You've already said this to the kid. And I'm like, honey, you're right. She'll say things like, when the girls tell you something, honey, just listen to them. You don't have to turn everything into a life lesson. And I'm like, honey, you're right. It's like in my DNA. I have to turn everything into a life lesson. My wife has so many amazing qualities, and for all these years, all I did was focus my attention on the poop in our marriage instead of all the blessings. The solution became so simple, so effective. When I would get annoyed or irritated, I would quickly remind myself of her great qualities. And behold in my mind her wonderful attributes. And you know what? The negative thoughts and feelings would just dissipate, just like that. Literally like a hot knife on cold butter. Because the things that annoyed and irritated me about my wife paled in comparison to her great qualities. I want to tell you why I like hanging out with drippers. They're just more fun. They're easygoing. They're flexible. People who are non-drippers like me, we may dot the I's, cross the T's. We're on time. We're organized. We get things done. But we can be a little bit more difficult. Now, an important point that I want you to miss is that you cannot get both. You're not going to get someone like me who's super type A, but then I'm like super easygoing and flexible. In most cases, you're going to have one or the other. Now, Pastor David Shin made a statement that very well underscores the point that I'm trying to make. He said, conservatives have good ideas but difficult personalities. That's me. I'm a conservative. I got good ideas. Being on time is a good idea, but I might be a little bit more difficult. My wife, she's like a liberal. Being late, not a good idea. Bad idea. But she has a great personality. She's likable. Now, where's Jesus? Now, Jesus is right in the middle. He's balanced. He's got a great personality, and he has great ideas. And we want to be like Jesus. But the reality is that most of us are somewhere on this continuum. For me personally, having someone who is easygoing, super flexible, and forgiving trumps someone who is on time and can dot the I's and cross all the T's. King Solomon in the book of Proverbs gives us wise counsel. In Proverbs 14:4, he writes, where no oxen are, the crib is clean. You don't have cows, you're not going to have poop, no mess. But why do people choose to have ox? Because there's much increase, there's strength, there are blessings and benefits that come with having an ox. If we apply this to our message, I want to make it clear, the oxen is not the woman. The oxen represents the marriage institution. No marriage, no mess, no poop. You get marriage, you're going to have a mess. There's going to be things to clean up. But what comes with the marriage? There's strength that comes. The Bible tells us where two are walking together. There's companionship, there's partnership, there's joy and happiness of working together. The key, of course, is to have a marriage where the blessings outweigh the mess. Now, sure, can you have a marriage where there's more mess than blessings? Sure, that can happen. You're married to someone who's a narcissist, someone who's got addiction problems, someone who's very selfish and self-centered. You can have that. But in my case, and I would say for the majority of marriages, most aren't dealing with those things. And I had way more blessings and benefits that easily outweighed the negative issues. But I was focusing all my energy on those tiny little things and making mountains out of molehills. There is so much more that unites my wife and I than divides us. And what unites us is so much more important than what divides us. My wife complements my weaknesses, hence together there is strength. I've heard it said that complementarity is more important than compatibility. And I found this to be so true. Dr. John Gottman, a renowned relationship researcher, states that there are 4 key things for a successful marriage, and one of those 4 things is regularly expressing appreciation and fondness for your partner, and not criticizing and showing contempt. God has shown me how to fix my marriage, and research is validating this to be a proven method. Now, it's important that you don't compare your relationship with other people's relationships. You don't be like, well, his wife doesn't do this. Why do you want to make sure you focus on your relationship and look for the blessings that are in your own relationship. You can apply this to all the relationships in your life. Sometimes my wife will tell me something about my daughters, and I'm thinking, and then my wife will remind me, honey, let's remember our kids, they work hard. You know, they're walking, you know, they're doing all these things, and why am I getting all riled up? In my office, when one of my staff does something, like for example, recently they wrote the wrong thing on a lab slip. This costs money. This costs time for the patient. And then I just quickly have to remind myself what a blessing my staff are, what they do for our office, and that we couldn't run a successful office without our staff. The pen of inspiration tells us, Dwell upon the good qualities of those with whom you associate, and see as little of their errors and failings. When tempted to complain of what someone has said or done, praise something in that person's life or character. By dwelling upon the faults of others, we are changed into the same image. The converse also applies. As we dwell on the good attributes of others, we are also changed into the same image. Because the Bible tells us by beholding, we become changed. Satan does a great job of bombarding us with negative thoughts. According to the National Science Foundation, the average person has 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. 80% of our thoughts are negative, and 95% are repetitive. Can you think how many negative thoughts are running through our brain? And it's because we're infected with a virus called sin. So, how likely is it that our thoughts towards God, are they positive or negative? God, why did you allow this to happen? God, where were you? God, how could you? Do you know that the second and third most repeated commands in the Bible are to give praise and give thanks? Why did God give us these commands? And repeat them so many times in Scripture. It's given to us to thwart off the attacks of the enemy who want us to ruminate on negative thoughts. Hence, when we spend time in prayer, that's why we need to begin time in our prayer time, just earnestly, just praising and thanking God for His goodness and His mercy in our lives. There are so many times that God has saved my life. I have a list I just write down. Whenever I come across something from my past where God literally saved my life, I write it down. I could tell you story after story. There's no reason I should be standing before you today. I'll just share with you just a few. There was camp meeting at Auburn Academy. And if you've ever been to Auburn Adventist Academy in Washington, you can buy illegal fireworks at the Indian reservations before you get to the academy. So some of my friends, roommates, had illegal fireworks, and from the dorm room, we'd light them and throw them out the window. I threw one out the window, a spark landed back in that box of fireworks. The whole thing caught on fire. My hand started burning. I dropped the box. I could have been known as the guy who burnt down Auburn Adventist Academy. In dental school, I T-boned my best friend on a jet ski. My jet ski hit his jet ski. He's lying in the water bleeding. I could have killed my best friend. Nothing short, when I look back, that God preserved our lives. We had a friend, we were climbing El Capitan. We were rock climbing, he's disabled. And as we were on El Capitan, I'm not gonna go into the whole story, I have it on video, we almost dropped him. There was no protection on the rope. It's hard to explain if you're not a rock climber, but we could have dropped him. And so when I look back, it's only by God's grace and mercy that I stand before you today. When I prayed and asked God to help me love my wife the way she was, unbeknownst to me, I was crossing into stage 4 of marriage. I choose to love and accept you as you are. I'm a firm believer that when we pray, we have a part to play. Now, there's a statement that we've all heard before, God helps those who help themselves. You've heard that before. Is there any merit in that statement, or is that some kind of cliche statement we've just made up? Do you know what Ellen White says? She adds an additional word. She said, God helps those only who help themselves. So this is a true statement. So while love comes with strong feelings and emotions, love is a principle. Love involves a conscious choice to show care, respect, and commitment to another person. When I was younger, I used to think that the idea of an arranged marriage was ludicrous. The concept to me was archaic and repulsive, because we're not used to that in our culture. What do you think of arranged marriages? Now that I have 2 daughters that are 20 and 18, I've changed my mind. I think arranged marriages are a great idea. It just makes so much sense. According to available data, arranged marriages generally have a higher success rate with significantly lower divorce rates. You can't argue with that. Arranged marriages are still common today in India, and I want to share with you their perspective. It goes like this. Americans marry the one they love. We love the one we marry. That's pretty profound, isn't that? Isn't that beautiful? It underscores the point that love is a choice and marriage is about commitment to a covenant you have made. I have a new message I'm working on, a relationship message. I was working on it while I was flying out here. And it's called Late to the Potluck. Because I work with a lot of volunteer ministry people, and a lot of them are single. Most of them in their 30s and 40s, and they want to get married. And so part of this message is recognizing what marriage is, that it's a covenant, it's not a contract. It's so much deeper than what our culture portrays about what marriage is. I wish I had known these things in my 20s. I would have been praying more. I would have been focused. But so many people in their 20s, they're so focused on their careers, they're not really thinking about it. They get into their 30s and they realize what happens when you're late to the potluck. All the good food's gone, right? I was sharing this message this summer at a conference, and a young Indian gentleman, 25 years old, just finished medical school, came up to me and he goes, I want to share with you another perspective that us Indian people hold. He goes, you don't choose who your siblings are. You love them, don't you? You don't choose who your parents are. You love them. Parents, do we get to choose who our children are? But we love them anyways, right? So why should you choose who your spouse is? I was like, that's kind of a good point there. Emphasizing again the point that love is not just an emotion, it's a commitment, it's a choice. By God's grace, we moved into stage 5 of marriage. I'm blessed to have you in my life. I found out why she puts the toilet paper so it comes from underneath. It's because she's left-handed, and a lot of times the toilet paper's on the right side and you have to reach over. It's hard. See, she wasn't crazy. I thought she was crazy. She had a good reason. But there's other people. If you have cats, you want to make sure it's coming from the bottom or the cats will unravel the toilet paper. After 23 years, guess what? She's still late to church. But we solved that problem. We just started taking separate cars. Because usually, I used to be the one that goes and opens the church doors. I start prayer meeting. And you know what? We just don't fight about it anymore. And nowadays, now that we just moved to Loma Linda, now we like to go as a family. And she's still late. You know what? We serve a gracious God. And you know what? I'd rather we be late to church, but we're together as family, and we're not fighting. And I've just learned to let these things go. It was shared with me that someone who had heard my message, they too began taking separate cars to church. It is an effective solution. My wife and I didn't have much in common, but what we shared, which was so important, is that we shared core values. Our commitment to God and family. Integrity, compassion, work ethic, the things that mattered. Another key core value we shared, willingness to forgive. My wife was more forgiving than I was, but I've learned to be forgiving. The following quote is attributed to Billy Graham's wife, Ruth. A happy marriage is a union of two good forgivers. We humans like to talk about personality types like Myers-Briggs, MBTI, Enneagrams, what's your love language? But when you look through the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy, there's not a lot in there about personality. Ellen White talks about temperament. But what is it that the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy talk about extensively? Character. And she defines character as the thoughts and feelings combined that make up the moral character. That's what's important, is character. We were on polar ends of the spectrum, and we went from polar ends to where we are now much closer. Life is easy. She understands me, and I understand her, and we are in sync. My wife surprises me all the time, and I'm like, man, that's not the person I married. I'm like, who are you? I see God doing amazing things in her life. Man, you want a new wife? Ask God to change you. He'll give you a new wife. I'm not the same person I used to be. My wife said to me, 내가 시킨 대로만 하면 손해볼 게 하나도 없어. Translated means, if you just do what I tell you to do, you will in no way be at a disadvantage or be at a loss. And you know what? She's right. No one cares about my success more than my wife does. She's in my corner. She's my number one supporter. She's not putting me down. She wants to see me succeed. Years ago, if she said that, I would have been offended. Like, how dare you? How could you say that to me? I've learned not to get offended when my wife tells me things because she cares. God is in the business of changing us. It's called sanctification. It's the work of a lifetime. My parents have been married for over 50 years, and my dad said if anything ever happened to his wife, my mom, he said he will never get remarried again because I don't want to have to train somebody all over again. He's joking, of course, but let me tell you what he's saying. Over many, many years, they have melded and molded together. In the context of marriage, to meld and mold describes the ongoing process of two distinct individuals combining their lives and personalities to form a single new partnership. My mom told me a few months ago that she is thankful for my dad because my dad makes life easy for her. They love each other. I was happy to hear my mom say this. I want to be a husband that is making my wife's life easier and not harder. My dad wasn't always easy. You know where I get my non-dripping tendencies from? From my dad. My dad is neurotically clean. In the garage, everything is in its place. You can eat off the floor in my parents' house. My parents, when they were moving to Washington, this is probably about 24 years ago, after I graduated from dental school, I moved to Washington. I invited my parents to move up. So they packed up everything and left Sacramento to come live in Washington. And when my dad packs, people will ask my dad to come over to their house to move. And one way to make my dad very unhappy is you haven't done your part. You show up and nothing's really, my dad, everything's put in boxes ahead of time. It's all marked. And when he had packed that truck, it's like Tetris. He packs it like a professional mover. And this old lady saw what my dad did, and she looked at the van, and she looked at my mom, and she goes, he must have been difficult to live with. But I've seen my father change over the years, and now they work so beautifully together. As humans, we try so hard to change the people around us. I tried to change my wife. Do you know what happens when you try to change your wife or your spouse? You fight. If you try to change your kids, what happens? You fight. The Bible teaches us that you can't even change yourself. Who's the only one that can change us? That's right. We need the gifts of the Spirit. And it's only as God changed me that our marriage could become a blessing. God's ways are not our ways. We naturally want to control and change the people around us. God's ways are so counterintuitive to our ways. You want to be strong, what does God say? You be weak. In your weakness, my strength will be made perfect. You want to be first, what does God say? You be last. The last will be first, first will be last. You want victory, what does God say? Surrender. You surrender, I'll give you victory. We want to change and control the people around us. God says, you know what? I want you to change. And when I'm done changing you, then I'll take care of the people around you. Now I understand that song that we used to sing. Not my brother, not my sister, but it's not my father, not my mother. It's not the pastor, not the deacon. In a new stanza, it's not my wife, not my children, but it's me, O Lord. I love that we serve a God who is in the business of changing us. We serve a God who is a master of taking curses and turning them into blessings. And if we surrender that to Him, He can take a mess and turn it into a message. And when we pass that test, He gives us a testimony to share. Earlier, I mentioned that I knew what the problem was. It was my wife. You know what God revealed to me? I was the problem in our marriage. My wife was the same sweet person that I'd married. I was the one who was critical and difficult. Patriarchs and prophets tells us, Eve was created from a rib taken from the side of Adam, signifying that she was not to control him as the head, nor to be trampled under his feet as an inferior, but to stand by his side as an equal, to be loved and protected by him. A part of man, bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh, she was his second self, showing the close union and the affectionate attachment that should exist in this relation. I want you to pay close attention to the verbiage. She was his second self. When things are not going well between my wife and I've learned that I need to take a close look at myself because she is my second self. And because of our close relationship, more often than not, there's a high probability that much of the problems in our marriage may be stemming from me. Now, this isn't always the case because just as there are some crazy men, there are also crazy women out there too. But speaking in generalities, because of the way that God has created us, our wives, their hearts are knit to ours. So I am a firm believer that we men hold a greater responsibility when there are problems in the home. I'm deliberately writing harder on the men because the Bible is clear that our role is not just to be the provider, but also the protector of our homes. Ours is to protect the hearts of the women in our lives. As a father of 2 girls, I'm on a mission to help married women to live longer. You're welcome, ladies. As marriage has been one of the greatest joys of my life, I want more people to experience the blessings of marriage. Stage 6 is I want to grow old with you. I love my wife. My wife doesn't just love me now, she likes me too. This is important to me. A 100-year-old lady was being interviewed. She was asked, what is your secret to staying healthy until 100? She replied, it's all thanks to my husband. The interviewer asked, is he so good to you? The old lady replied, yeah. Thankfully, he died early. I don't want it to be like this. I want my wife to beat the statistics, that she lived a better and longer life because she was married to me. As we come to an end, I mentioned at the beginning that our home is our first mission field. If so, who is God using to win my wife into his kingdom? He's using me. Am I painting a beautiful picture of a merciful and gracious God who loves unconditionally? Am I helping my wife to fall more in love with Jesus? Am I helping God to accomplish his will in my wife's life? Or am I painting a distorted picture of who God is? Have I become an obstacle and hindering the work that God is seeking to accomplish in my wife's life? When I look back on my life, I'm in awe of God's goodness and blessings in my life. God has given me more than I deserve. He has blessed me with a wife that I love and am truly thankful for. He has blessed me with daughters that I adore. I owe it to God to be the best husband and the best father that I can be. Two of my biggest goals in life are to be an elite level husband and an elite level daddy. And there's only one way for me to achieve this goal, and that is for me to seek to become more like Jesus each and every day. Thank you for the opportunity to spend this time with you this evening. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. May you have a blessed Sabbath evening.